So moving now into the Save tab. We mentioned in our introduction that we're going to do this by establishing some particular data-saving goals and then introduce the tools that we can use to realize those goals. So the first thing we're going to introduce is some different data-saving profile types that have been added into ENLIGHT with version 1. Again, the reference to the user guide there, these are covered starting on page 237. And so with those, we'll introduce some of the common data-saving controls and start with a very basic data save demonstration. And after that, we can go through a couple of our data logging examples, both slow periodic and rapidly triggered. And then finally, we'll look at the resulting files and the locations where they're saved. Okay, if we move to our Save tab, we can see that in addition to some basic configurations, this allows us to establish where data is locally saved to the machine running ENLIGHT. We also see some local data saving configurations down here, and we have set some pre-configured data saving configurations to log sensor values, and there are two separate editable sensor value configurations. There is a configuration to log the raw peak wavelengths as they're acquired from the interrogator off of the acquisition tab, to periodically log the spectral response. And we demonstrated earlier, although I guess we need to re-demonstrate, logging the events throughout use of ENLIGHT. So in both of our examples, our slow and our triggered dynamic sensor logging examples, we're logging sensors. So we're going to start with these two configurations. So here we see two buttons. One is to edit the data logging settings, and two is to enable and disable. So we'll go ahead and start editing the settings and look at some of the controls that are there. When we're creating data files from ENLIGHT data, be it from sensors, spectrum, peaks, or whatever the source, we have several common types of controls. The first is when we start logging data. The simplest there is obviously to start logging immediately when we click on the button. There are other options to delay data logging to begin on the next minute. This allows us to create several data logging configurations that will start synchronously at the next minute, at the next hour, or you can specify a particular time. In our simple example, we'll just begin logging data immediately.
That can be useful if you're running multiple copies of ENLIGHT, talking to multiple interrogators. You might set it for the next minute or the next hour so they all start simultaneously.
Similarly, we have controls on when that data logging event stops, and this is basically the entire data logging event, independent of whether it's continuous or repeated or triggered. So this is basically for the entire data saving profile. On Unbound, it will continue to record until such a time as you, the user, go in and disable the button, the start data logging, stop data logging button. Alternately, you can establish a duration for your data logging event in units of seconds, minutes, hours, or days. So again, in our very simple example, we'll be Unbound where we just start and stop. So the data is saved to the local machine in flat files. And you have the option to manage the size of those data files. This is obviously useful when trying to transfer data files, perhaps when it's complete. And it may be more convenient to limit file size based upon a maximum size file. Here it defaults to 256 kilobytes. Or if you want your data files to reflect some particular time period, then you can also have the file stop or close out the file and recreate a new file on a particular time limit independent of the size of the file itself. Similarly, there is an option to run Unbound. This is obviously to be used with caution because a very high data rate and continuous data saving can generate some very large data files using the 1 kHz interrogators. But it is definitely an option as well.